Okay, welcome everybody to this week in Mormons General Conference edition. We're here to talk about the Saturday morning session from the evening in the UK, 7 hours
Oh,
ahead of Utah. But we have a crossover episode now. I'm Daniel from the international episodes. The other Daniel, the other half of the twin Daniels, can't be with us today, and Georgia can't either, unfortunately. But we're crossing over with one of the twin siblings. Matt is here with us. Welcome, Matt.
it's good to be with you, Daniel. Good to meet you.
Yeah, actually, we just met 3 minutes ago.
Yeah,
Great so far. It's a lifelong friendship instantaneously.
it
No, but
starts right away.
yeah, how are things there? Like it's 12 p.m. It's noon, right?
It's lunchtime here, so yeah, things are nice. The weather's great. I think it's going to get colder starting tomorrow, so
Mm.
this would be a good day to see General Conference in person if somebody wanted to do that.
Yeah, indeed. I think, well, I lived a few years in Utah and probably General Conference, both conferences generally catch, they catch like some of the best weather
Yeah.
in the region. And it's great. I remember in 2011, I was graduating in April, and that one, it snowed throughout. And
Wow.
that was quite nice. My parents came to visit like for the first time my mom went to the US ever. My dad hadn't been there for like 30 years, and it was all snowy and like very
Wow.
unconventional, but it was beautiful. And I think the cover of the ensign back then
Uh-huh.
was the Salt Temple all snow capped, and it was quite lovely. So, well, great to be with you. I know we have a 15-minute time slot to fill, so we're gonna crack on straight away with conference. So I've been
Yeah.
watching it here at church. I don't know if you can tell that this is a bit of a churchy environment. We're here with a few of our ward members and families that decided to watch it together. We even ordered pizza. So what's
Oh.
best than that? A bit unconventional, but it reminded me of my mission days actually.
So Daniel, if you are you guys going to watch it there tomorrow on Sunday?
So we're going to watch the Saturday evening session, so the one at 1 a.m.
Oh.
here, the last one at 10 a.m. in the morning. We generally don't do it, but we will
Yeah.
do it to, well, for everybody, anyone that may want to come, of course, but especially if we have any people that show up that didn't know it was a conference and
Oh,
there's someone
that's
here
right.
early. Yeah, because it happens. And it's
And
quite sad when it happens.
the Saturday evening session will be shorter. I think it's only scheduled to be an hour and a half. So then
Oh, is it?
it
Well,
would be a short
it
church
has
for
been
everybody.
shorter. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's actually a very good point. I didn't
And then
remember
will you
that.
cook chicken nuggets? Is that the plan? You cook chicken nuggets in the microwave or the oven at the church?
Yeah, well, that might get me in trouble. Well, maybe not in England, maybe, but I know the trouble it costs some. But no, tomorrow I think is going to be foodless.
Oh.
It caused a little bit of, I wouldn't say controversy, but of course, it wasn't everybody's idea of general conference to meet and have pizza, which I
uh,
understand. I was a bit hesitant at first. I was like, let's do it after. But people have dinner quite early here, and a few families were like, you know what, it'd be better with the kids and everything. So it felt a little bit like a family home evening. To be fair, it felt
uh-huh.
a little bit like watching it at home. Like when I'm at home, it's a bit
Yeah.
more relaxed, right?
Yeah. Oh, that's
So
nice.
it was a good experience. Thank you. So what do you think of this first session? I don't know if you have any first impressions or any thoughts that stood out to you.
Yeah, so this is maybe a question I have for you. It seemed to me like we had some international speakers. There was somebody from Africa, and there was somebody. Where is Carlos Godoy from? I think it was
He's
Peru that he said he was from.
Brazil. He's from
Oh,
Brazil.
okay.
Yeah, but I think he was in the area presidency, and yeah, in the what would that be? South America Northwest area in Peru a
Okay.
few years ago.
So it seemed to me like the international speakers were way less focused on topics of marriage and celestial marriage than the American speakers were. I wonder if you have insights as to why that might be.
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I don't have a definite answer. I haven't kind of really thought
Yeah.
about it much, but a lot of the speakers. I think the other one was Elder Ardern that talked about
Yeah.
the Africa. The
Hmm.
humanitarian aid and all of that. I think he's from New Zealand actually, but
Oh, but
isn't
he
he the one
served
that's
in
an
Africa,
uncle of
probably.
Jacinda Ardern, the former Prime Minister of New Zealand? I think he is
Oh.
the uncle of her. Yeah, there's
Oh.
kind of a government connection there.
Wow.
But yeah, he might be serving now. I'm not sure, but it sounds like yeah, he's been assigned to Africa because of that experience in Uganda. I think that most. international general authorities and general officers not only have a kind of a previous background with the global church, but they're generally also assigned to more global areas rather than, I think most of them do spend some time in church headquarters in some departments like the temple department, welfare,
Hmm.
not. But generally speaking, they may have a little bit more interface with those things, and I guess that leads their ministry, or at least their priority, to some of those other topics. Now, that may be unique to this conference. I think, thinking of past conferences, 'cause I do pay a lot of
Yeah.
attention of those differences depending on their background. I wouldn't say that that's generally the norm. I think this one is stood out a bit more. I guess uh, President Oak's talk really made it stand out, right? I think
Yeah.
for many
Yeah.
that would be a talk that would be somewhat difficult to process. I certainly know some people, not just here,
Yeah.
but in general, that the plan of salvation addressed through that angle can be kind of it's still difficult. And I have some things that I jotted down about it. I
Yeah.
do
Let's
want
talk about
to,
that.
yeah.
Well, go ahead.
No, I wanted to first touch on Elder Bednar's talk, the opening talk,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
we can jump to Elder Oaks. So I I really, and I was texting with Danny, who can't be here now, about it, that I love that it felt like a tribute to those that serve uh, and that don't necessarily get public credit for it. And
Yes.
in a way, we're talking. Both of us have experience in our home country and in many wards and states that we've lived there, and it did remind us of some occasions where at least I feel that there at the time I lived there years ago there was a need for a talk like this, and what I mean is uh, I felt that local leadership often, not everybody of course, but often would have a bit of a bias to trying to show off, like for lack of a better
Yeah.
term, about the
Yeah.
things that they were doing or serving, or sometimes even taking a bit of an attitude of "I'm the boss" type of attitude,
Yeah. Yeah.
which I think it's completely opposite to the spirit of what Elder Bednar highlighted of paying homage to those that serve faithfully and quietly. I think he said in the last wagons, using that analogy from the pioneers and a number of other examples. So I just wanted to say that I love the more ministerial tone of the talk as well, because generally he's quite doctrinal,
Yeah.
and this one felt like a bit of a shift in gears from his traditional talks, even though it still had his traditional kind of language quirks.
Yeah.
How do you call this in English when you say like a phrase with a preposition? I don't know how to describe it, but like,
Yeah, we that's like a passive voice, I think that we call it. The way that the I call it general authority speak, because in my world, if you wrote like that or spoke like that, people would be like, you need to change that structure because you're being very passive in your language. And so it's a lot like that, this sort of passive voice.
yeah, and I had a few thoughts about that. I think the session was not absent of some of my pet peeves, like that passive voice that you describe, or general authority speak, and
Yeah.
the speed of it. But in general, I really appreciated that we kicked things off with Elder Benner's talk. That I was expecting it was going to set a mood in that direction. Generally, I felt it stayed that way. Uh,
Yeah.
Elder, um,
Let me just ask
Elder,
you a
yes.
question about that with Elder Bednar. So I've noticed bishops oftentimes speak very much that same way, where they say, "I could not. This ward would not function without all of the membership of the ward." That bishops seem to be acutely aware of how much they rely on the members of the ward. I've
Mhm.
I've noticed there's other, maybe I would call them ambitious people in wards that oftentimes are maybe self-promoting or self-aggrandizing, but is that what you mean when you say a more ministerial tone? Because it sounds more like what, like a bishop or a shepherd would be saying.
Yeah, I think there's, yes, that's one part of it. That but I think what I mean by ministerial tone mostly is that the usual type of talk that Elder Bernard gives is very kind of establishing doctrine, like
Yeah,
this,
yeah,
or deep diving on a particular insight, and staying on the theory and some with practical application, but very theoretical generally. Whereas this one felt much more like a thank you. I took it as a thank you
yeah,
for the
yeah.
service
Definitely was.
that people do across all layers, kind of
Yeah,
flipping the tortillas, I would say, and looking at what's generally hidden, right?
Yeah.
and paying tribute to those that do that type of service. So in that sense, I feel like a change in tone, and more ministerial in that it recognized the individuals rather than trying to establish a top-down doctrine,
Yeah.
which I certainly welcomed personally.
And this might springboard into the other topic, but as I listened to the examples that Elder Bednar used of the people who are at the back of the wagon, the specific examples he used, I didn't hear anything in there that kind of like praised single members of the church.
Hmm.
And I was thinking about how in the church, about a third of our members are not married adults, right? They're single adults. And so some of what I heard this session made me think, if I were a single adult, would I feel like a second class citizen? And I think that there's some of that, right? There's some of that in some of these talks where it's like sometimes the single adults feel like they're not equal to the married adults.
Now that you say that, I think I agree with that. I'm going through my notes here, and I'm having a hard time finding a reference that would make single adults necessarily being kind of represented or something like that.
Yeah,
And
like
I think on that
if they
same
put up
vein,
chairs, I guess. Yeah, if they put up and take down chairs, it could be them.
yeah, yeah. But
You
on
mentioned
that
that.
same vein, Elder Godoy's talk with experience about the taxi driver and all of that, and
Hmm.
then addressing members that have left and members that may be in but still struggling or not living up to their covenants, as he put it. He at one point talked about lukewarm membership, and I felt like the the solution he proposed or the invitation felt a little bit oversimplistic to me. Now,
Yeah,
wearing my global hat, I kind of see why. I think that in Latin America, at least, in Chile certainly, and imagine in Peru might be a bit similar, it remains quite common that people might either join the church or be lifelong members, but really struggle simply to live the kind of the day-to-day, week-to-week type of church activity, and they might fall away not because they have a doctrinal issue or because they disagree with something, simply because it just becomes tough, and they go away. So this type of message of, be the strong link, don't be the weak link, that he emphasized,
yeah,
might have some relevance there. But I was thinking from the
yeah,
standpoint of the many people that I know that are very engaged, but it's their engagement that's troubling, that's difficult. And that
yeah,
leads me to Elder Oak's talk. And I'm thinking of the many people that might have heard this kind of second lesson of Preach My Gospel talk, and really focused on the part when he mentions the family proclamation, right? That
yeah,
we know that it can be a sticking point for many, or a document that is weaponized by many others, take it to an extreme.
yeah.
Um, so, what do you think about that?
So I think that most of what he taught was doctrine. It's all just in how you frame the doctrine. And there was one point in his talk where my son was asking me, he was like, wait a minute, can I go to the celestial kingdom if I'm not married in the temple? And the answer is yes. Like, yes, you can go to the celestial kingdom if you're not married. And this, right, this distinction of salvation and exaltation, it just sort of makes it sort of, we talk a lot in the church about grace, how we're saved by grace. But this was very heavy. Choose which laws you want to follow, and that's going to lead you to a kingdom. And so to me, it seemed like this is actually the real paradox in our church, where we talk about we're saved by grace, and then this after all we can do, but then this real strong heavy emphasis on you got to follow the laws of a kingdom to decide how saved you're going to be in the end. And
Yeah.
I think that's just challenging for a lot of people. But I do love how he emphasized that everybody's saved, everybody goes to heaven, and it's just a matter of like where you're saved. And I also liked at the end where he said there's a lot of stuff we don't know, and I think sometimes
Yes.
I just hold on to that. There's a lot of stuff we don't know.
And that's my personal approach, is that we just don't know it. Now, a paradox within the talk felt like there's a lot we don't know, but also establishing a lot. At one point, he mentioned the family proclamation as based on irrevocable doctrine. So, without making
Yeah,
reference specifically to which doctrines, but I think we see kind of the subtweeting on that, what it means.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's a complex issue. But I did like at the very end when he talked about another sticking issue for many regarding or doctrine about sealings, when he said that God will not force anyone on a sealing relationship against their will. It's
yeah,
kind of an eternal celestial uh, kind of take on consent at the end of the day,
yeah.
which I think many will welcome that it was said
I
in those
love
words
that.
and from that level. So I'm
Yeah,
sure it's going to give a lot of reasons for people to talk about. And
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to the conversation, not just about this talk, but about the previous ones. Unfortunately, we don't have more time to cover Sister Amy Wright's talk on the 10 virgins and her experience, Elder Danes, and Elder
I loved
Pistors
it.
on
Yeah.
Gathering of Israel. We touched
Yeah.
briefly on all the rest, but we have a hard stop now at the 15-minute mark. But
Yeah.
just to let you know, there's going to be one of these episodes after each session later on with the other This Week in Mormons hosts. So we invite you to tune in and to listen to those. And any last words, Matt, from your side?
No, thanks for inviting me. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, this was great. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for joining us, and see you at the next session. Enjoy Journal Conference. Bye bye.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.